What's up, guys? Jim McIntosh here. Red Zone DFS, Red Zone Sports, Red Zone Best Ball, and now Red Zone Dynasty? Sure. Get the Circa Millions hat. Just a heads up, guys. We're doing the Circa Millions again. We're going to be dropping shows weekly, talking about our picks. They're going to be short shows, 10, 15 minutes, just kind of going over our selections for the week. It's a great contest, a lot of fun. We all three split the cost. We're kind of all in it together again this year. Just outside the cash last year. But, it is what it is. Try our shot again this year. We feel like we have a little bit better of a process this year. So, yeah, let's see what we can do with it. So, first off, best ball. A lot of cool things going on with best ball right now. It's kind of crunch time. The Millie Best Ball Mania Underdogs big contest is kind of filling up right now. So right now, what I'm kind of looking for is just going to talk about some of the guys that, I'm targeting as far as, my biggest the guys that I'm targeting right now. There were some guys like Terry McLaurin that I got a ton of early in the season that, now with the Jahan Dotson news, he's just kind of shooting up draft boards. I still like Terry, don't get me wrong, but I'm certainly, limiting. But I want to look for some other areas and some other guys that, I really like and that, I think have a lot of value as once you get a little bit further down into the draft. So I'm going to go over a few of those guys right now. We're going to talk about some of them. We're going to start, at around around pick 100, right? Stuff like that. One guy I want to talk about who is going just right around there is Jonathan Brooks, right? Now, I know that he's going to start the year on the pup. But really, again, for best ball, let's remember what we're looking for. We're looking for guys, not only that are going to excel in the beginning of the season, but really people that, you're targeting. Maybe it's a timeshare now and you just like the better player. Or in Jonathan Brooks's case, he's not healthy right now, but he is going to be healthy pretty soon. So we want to make sure to take advantage of that because if he was healthy and, the starting running back right now, great. Let's be honest. When he gets healthy, I don't think Chuba Hubbard is going to be like the guy to say he's like, it's not going to have a hard time taking his job. But look, the main thing is we saw last year, right? Same offensive coordinator came over from Tampa. He gave Rachaad White the second most touches in the NFL, only behind Christian McCaffrey. And Rachaad White, his efficiency metrics were terrible, right? So again, we have a young quarterback. They're going to try and run the ball a lot. It's a weak division, right? Don't have great defenses within the division. So he's a guy that I'm still drafting. He hasn't shot up draft boards or anything like that. And I think a lot of the drafts that I've been doing lately, I've been seeing that where he goes, you've got a lot more casual people popping into these drafts. People who are like myself who are drafting in, May, June, even July, were pretty sharp. I think we're all pretty sharp. Now you're getting a lot of the more casuals hopping in. He's a guy that I'm really targeting, a guy that I'm completely staying away from, who's injured right now, who, starting on the pup, can return in, 4 weeks is Nick Chubb. I just don't want anything to do with Nick Chubb this year. I don't know how healthy he's going to be. His injury was a lot different. So he's a guy. So Brooks is a guy kind of in that area that I'm going for. Chubb is a guy that I'm staying away from. Staying on running back here, another guy that I think throughout the year is going to gain more share, especially on DraftKings where it's full point PPR, is going to be Chase Brown. I think he's absolutely due for a breakout year. They like what he's doing. He was getting a lot of the work. Zach Moss had a great year for the Colts last year. They paid him. Everyone's saying, oh, well, they paid him $8 million. So what? They paid him $8 million. He's on the team now. They're not just going to give a guy touches. It's not like they just signed, a wide receiver for $30 million a year that, like, okay, yeah, obviously that guy's going to get touches, but a running back for $8 million a year for 2 years, like that's not saying anything. He's not earned any touches based on that, right? So he's a guy that I'm fine just kind of staying away from. Or going towards is Chase Brown. I would rather have him than Zach Moss. Zach Moss is going definitely earlier than Chase Brown right now. I've seen him in some drafts go pretty close together to each other. So that's a guy that I'm really targeting. A quarterback that consistently has just kind of been down in that range is like Brock Purdy and Jordan Love. These are guys where you can take late and later, you know, in rounds like 9, 10, 11, sometimes 12, I've seen Brock Purdy drop to. I don't know why both of those guys are going so late. You want to have players, the way I approach best ball mostly is you want to try and have players on good offenses. Now, think what you want about Brock Purdy. I'm a Niners fan, so, you know, I think pretty good things about Brock Purdy, but you don't have to be a Niners fan to draft Brock Purdy. You're looking for the production, right? You've got Ayuk now signed, Trent Williams. You know, they'll get him into it. It's going to be all hands on deck, right, to try and go after this thing again. So, you know, him and Jordan Love, I just don't see why they're going so much later than a few of these other quarterbacks, right? A lot of people, like if you look at, you know, some best ball rankings, both of those guys are ranked 10 and 11, right? Like I would much rather, for fantasy purposes, you look, I love CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is awesome. But the Texans are also in a much different situation this year. I think that they're going to be playing a lot differently. They signed Joe Mixon. There's a guy that we're talking about. Their head coach is DeMeco Ryans. They have a pretty good defense. They're going to try and run the ball to control things a lot more. CJ Stroud put up some awesome numbers last year, but guess what? He was playing in a lot of negative game scripts for the team, so they were just throwing a ton, right? So while I like CJ Stroud, he's going in, you know, the top 3, 4, like the third or the fourth round. I'll take Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, you know, over those guys, no problem. Tua is another guy. Why is he going so late? I want players in high-powered offenses, right? I like Tua over Caleb Williams. Call me crazy. I get that Caleb offers some rushing upside, but we don't know how good Caleb's going to be. Seeing defenses, things like that. Yes, he's looked great in the preseason. Oh yeah, by the way, he's been playing against guys who might be hanging sheetrock in you know, right now or in a couple weeks. Practice squad guys, right? So like, I know the Bears are 4-0, and like I see Caleb Williams jumping up the draft board, but like, look, I would much rather have, you know, Love, Purdy, Tua, in those guys if I'm looking at a passing type quarterback. I get the allure of guys who are runners, right? But like CJ Stroud should not be going in front of Anthony Richardson. He should not be going in front of Kyler Murray, who's going to run around and throw the ball a lot. You know, it's just kind of strange to me. And another guy, if we're staying on quarterbacks, is if you're going to wait, why not just draft Sam Darnold? Especially, he's an easy stack in best ball. If you get, all you have to do is get Jefferson. I've done a lot of drafts where I've gotten Jefferson early. You get Aaron Jones in there, and you get Sam Darnold way late. Like pick, you know, 160, 170, that all day long. We saw the kind of numbers that some of the guys who were playing last year for Minnesota were putting up. Sam Darnold's not that bad of a quarterback. He's a massive increase for what they were rolling out there last year. And yeah, it sucks that J.J. McCarthy got hurt, but Sam Darnold is definitely a guy I'm targeting late in best ball drafts. All right, let's switch gears back to some wide receivers that I like, since we haven't really talked about many of those guys yet. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, is really, in the beginning of the summer, I wasn't super high on him. But the more and more you look at it with the new offensive coordinator that's there, I think he's a guy that is primed for a good season this year, especially in best ball, because the nice part about best ball is you don't have to pick and choose when you get those guys, right? So JSN's a fantastic guy. Again, the guy that can come on later in the season, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, right away, then it brings me to my next favorite guy. Right now, he is my highest exposure. I don't think I'm going to be get to the max in the milli, but I've got 122 teams right now in the DK Millionaire Maker, and I've got Khalil Shakir on 32% of them. It's just because I love the opportunity. The Buffalo Bills vacated, I think it was something like 160 targets that they had on their team last year of guys who are gone. Diggs, Gabe Davis, all these guys are not there anymore, right? So I love Dalton Kincaid, yes. Keon Coleman is an unknown. I'm a big Florida State fan. He has some certain deficiencies that no one's really seen yet. We haven't seen him play a whole lot. I know that Khalil Shakir and Josh Allen have a connection. I'm not worried about the Curtis Samuel thing. Curtis Samuel's fine. He's a little bit older. He's in his late 20s, and now he's got a turf toe issue. Those things just don't go away, okay? Unless you're going to shut it down and actually have surgery on it, that's an injury that's going to be around all year. And for best ball, this isn't redraft, okay? You don't have to pick and choose the game to play Khalil Shakir. He's going so late. It's kind of a crime, right? I just don't understand it. And I thought that he would continue, start to shoot up some draft boards a little bit. But look, the Bills lost Matt Milano. Their defense is definitely not as good as it was last year. And I think that they're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit. Now, I love James Cook as well, right? But again, I want pieces on good offenses, right? So that's kind of where I'm going there. If we scroll down, I want to talk about some of the sleeper guys that I'm looking at for best ball that I think can make a legitimate. Jalen McMillan is one of my favorite late round sleepers for best ball. I mean, he's going to get more playing time than Trey Palmer. Again, we're talking about best ball, right? A guy that's going as late as Jalen McMillan. You don't have to pick and choose for when this guy's going to go, right? It's just one of those things where he could have 3 to 4 spike games, and that's all you need from him. They have older receivers, right? They've got Mike Evans, who's been generally pretty healthy. Chris Godwin, who's always been pretty healthy, but he struggled a little bit, last year with some injuries. I really like Jalen McMillan. He's a guy that I am really, I like him a lot. I'm just pulling up something here on my computer, some of my notes. That we're going to go down toward the end here. Another guy, I talked about him. He's around ADP 65 right now. Another wide receiver kind of jumping back up. But Amari Cooper. I mean, when are we going to get to the point where we just, let's just keep drafting Amari Cooper? It's crazy to me that people just continuously don't want to draft Amari Cooper. I mean, it's wild. He's a guy that I really, really like. And he's just going to get peppered with fucking targets, right? Another wide receiver. Now that Jacoby Brissett has been named the starter, I really like Demario Douglas. Now, he's starting to creep up. He was going in the 190s. He's going a little bit earlier now. But Demario Douglas is another great option. I know they drafted Jalen Polk, but look, Demario Douglas he's going to be there. He's easy throws. It's just one of those things where, I really like where he's going, and it's not expensive. You can take him if you're desperate for quarterback, you took a stud early, like Josh Allen, and you want to take, maybe Jacoby Brissett, or maybe you want to take Drake May late and see if he comes on during the season, or if you don't, right? You don't have to do that. You could just take Demario Douglas. I really like him, as a value. A few other guys from down here that I'll touch on before I move on to some dynasty targets. I don't know why Justice Hill is going so late. It's been pretty widely publicized that he is going to be the backup to Derrick Henry. I love Derrick Henry, right? But there's certainly going to be those games when the Ravens are behind and it's 2-minute situations, passing situations, Derrick Henry's obviously going to get some targets, but Justice Hill's going to be in there, right? We don't need on the weeks where people are hurt or on bye weeks in best ball. right? You can't pick up and drop players. So you got to take a gamble on some of these guys. And I think that Justice Hill might be one of the better late round running backs to take because he's going to have an actual role on that team. Again, sticking with my mantra of picking players on good teams. The Ravens are a good team, right? So I want to kind of go with that. So those are kind of some of the guys in best ball that aren't the normal guys that everybody just kind of talks about, which I think is kind of funny. I think it's one of those things where, it's just like, yeah, no shit. We want to draft, Jamar Chase, or we want to draft, Marvin Harrison at his ADP. Like, yeah, of course we want to draft those guys, right? I'm just looking at updated ADPs to see if I missed anybody. Down here, some tight end targets. I know that Ben Sinnott has kind of been creeping up, but I like Zach Ertz a hell of a lot more for this year than Ben Sinnott. Now, when we get to the Dynasty portion of the show in a little bit here, that's certainly a guy. And another guy, too, that I think that if you look at some player comps, now it's not an exact thing, but if you look at the New York Jets, now I know they're kind of a tire fire, and this is predicated on Aaron Rodgers staying healthy. But I really think that Malachi Corley he doesn't really do much in the preseason, right? But those are the kind of guys we're looking for that can make an impact later in the year, right? I know Mike Williams is going to be healthy, right? But where you're drafting Malachi Corley at, you need him to slot into your lineup in best ball maybe like twice, maybe one time with like a big spike game. And he's a guy, that short area guy. It's going to be an easy throw for Aaron Rodgers. I look back at some of the good Packer teams. I kind of put him in like a Randall Cobb type of, ilk, a small, quick slot receiver, good with run after the catch. So that's kind of my last guy that I'll talk about from that side. And we'll transition over here into our dynasty rankings. So let's see here. Let me pull it up on my saved sheet real quick. And now I know that most people have, basically drafted all of their dynasty teams, but I want to kind of talk a little bit about guys that I think that might be a trade target like right now, or that you want to go get. My number one guy is Dontavian Wicks. I think that long-term, he could be a really special player for the Packers. He's going, in drafts, if you haven't done it, he's probably going around the like 170 mark, things like that. Probably a little bit higher in Dynasty, right? That's just regular ADP. But I think that Dontavian Wicks is a guy that I want some exposure to in Dynasty. I like him on his team. Again, he's a player on a good team with a young quarterback that's going to be there for a little bit. So he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to. I mentioned him earlier for best ball, but I think Chase Brown is a great guy to try and go target if nobody really got hurt this offseason too badly for Dynasty. So he's a guy I like. Another guy, the Kyren Williams news. Okay, this can apply for the best ball thing too, because he's seen a huge drop. I saw him drop to the 5th round the other day because they talked about that he was going to return punts. Did people watch the NFL last year? Did everyone realize that he was returning punts weeks 1 through 3, and then he tweaked his ankle, but he was still, while he was getting, a massive, 90%, share of the rushing attack there, he was still returning punts. Now look, Blake Corum, who knows what he's going to be? I don't know if Blake Corum knows how to pass block very well. I would assume that he was coming from Michigan in that pro style offense that they ran, but like the drop in the hate for the Kyren Williams stuff is just kind of crazy to me. I mean, I've taken him in a couple drafts. I'm more than happy. I just took him in a dynasty startup not too long ago, right? So he's a guy that I really, really like. And I just don't understand why people are kind of down on him so much. Like, it was such a wild overreaction that it was just like, man, like, are we really sure that's the issue here? Another guy I like taking in Dynasty is going to be Quentin Johnston. Super unproven, who knows? But his ADP is baked into that, right? In the Dynasty startup I just did, I got him in the 15th round. I really like that spot for him, right? 15th round, fantastic spot for him. He like Jalen McMillan is down there too. Again, talked about him for best ball. I like him a lot for Dynasty as well. Some other guys I really like. I really like Theo Johnson. Now he doesn't fit my mantra for drafting guys on on good teams, but he's a kind of a special outlier body size. I like what I've seen from him. I went back and watched some of his Penn State tape. He's a really special player. And on the Giants, I mean, he could even have some value this year. He's competing with Daniel Bellinger for targets, which is not like the biggest ringing endorsement, right? So I think he's a guy that later in dynasty drafts you can certainly target. You don't have to put him on the taxi squad this year. If you're playing on sleeper, it's got a really cool feature called the taxi spot, which basically means depending on your league settings, you can put rookies or guys with that have played in the league, so it's their second year in the NFL on there. Once week one starts, you can't touch them until afterwards, but it is what it is. Another dynasty target as far as like a quarterback, I think that Spencer Rattler's a pretty interesting option. I mean, Derek Carr is obviously still there. Derek Carr's been traditionally pretty healthy throughout his career. I've got Spencer Rattler in a few spots, and I put him on the taxi squad and, just kind of see what happens this year. If you don't have a taxi squad, it's okay. Most dynasty teams have like a deep bench. He's a guy that I think that you want to keep on the bench and just kind of see what happens. If you guys have already, done your draft and he's out there, I think that if you want to trade like a third round pick or something for Spencer Rattler, that's a quarterback I think that I would want to target. And then if we're talking quarterbacks as well, JJ McCarthy, I know he's hurt. Okay. A lot of people were taking him in the first round this year. There's a lot of people out there that, a week or two into the season, just not really thinking about the future. You're telling me right now that, like, if I could trade a second round rookie dynasty pick for JJ McCarthy, like, that you would want to do that? Like, I definitely am. That's something if you've seen Entourage, is that something you'd be interested in? Yeah, that's something I'd be interested in, is trading a second round pick for JJ McCarthy if you can. Just throw it out there. Who knows what people are going to say, right? As far as, some other dynasty targets, some younger guys we're talking about. I think that, if you could get Jacob Cowing for the Niners really late, he's a good stash for the future kind of guy. He's going to have maybe a little bit of role. Looks like he's going to be the Niners punt returner this year. But either him or like Isaac Guerendo, you could go for late. I think those two guys are good options to pick on the Niners if you want to take someone to stash for a little bit. Another guy, we talked about him a little bit. I'm really curious in Ben Sinnott. A lot of people, I traded him away in one dynasty. It's not because I don't like him. It's just I was just going for something else after I drafted him. But the whole point is I drafted this guy and then was able to trade him already for value because the hype around him is kind of so good. So that's a guy I'd go after. Frank Gore Jr. got cut from the Bills. Looked pretty good in the preseason. Had a weird little knee injury. He's a guy that you could probably trade maybe even fab budget for in a dynasty league. That throw him on the taxi squad this year. See if he gets a shot somewhere. I'm a sucker for him. Big Frank Gore fan myself. I think that's an interesting one. And then a few more here. For guys that to target, let me go over to my other sheet real quick. Let me go down here. Just some like real random flyers in some deeper leagues that I took and then I am stashing on the taxi squad this year. Tanner McKee, he's the backup for the Eagles. I thought he was really pro-ready coming out of Stanford. He ended up going really later. I think he might have even gone undrafted. But he's a guy that I'm willing to just take and throw and stash if you have a little bit deeper of a league. I also don't hate stashing Hendon Hooker. Now, Goff is probably going to be there, for a couple more years. But I really, really like Hooker's running ability. And if you can get him now, If you're on like a win now kind of team and you don't really care maybe about draft picks next year, like a 4th-round draft pick or a 3rd-round draft pick in the rookie draft, I think is something that you can go for. So Tanner McKee, and then for the Jets, I think Jordan Travis, he's on the pup. It's going to be or basically a redshirt year for him. He's a guy that I don't hate going to stash. So that's it. Some guys we kind of just talked about. Little dynasty, little best ball. Good luck out there, guys. Give us a follow over on Twitter at JJ McIntosh. And again, look for our Circa shows. They're going to be coming out. We'll have one out next week once the lines get released. And we'll talk about our picks. It's a really cool contest. You pick 5 games against the spread. You do have to enter at one of the Circa properties in Nevada. But you could get a proxy and kind of play with everywhere. So if you're planning a little trip to Vegas over the next week or so, it's a cool thing. Get in. If you know somebody that lives in the area, ask them to go enter for you. You guys can kind of go all in together. But listen to that content, follow us, see how we do. And have a great one. And everybody enjoy your holiday weekend.